Hello, everyone. Good morning, great afternoon, great evening, wherever or whenever you are watching this, and welcome to GlobalDots webinar. We'll have, I think, 1 minute top to let some more participants join, and then we'll kick it off. Hello, Dror.
Hey.
So, welcome everyone. Today's topic is AWS reserved instances and saving plans, sometimes called commitments, other times reservations, or even compute discounts. Whatever is your preferred terminology, one thing is certain. Using RI and SP drives the same outcomes. They are the quickest win AWS customers can achieve with cost savings. They are a first and foremost FinOps best practice, I would say. And what's very, very important is that they help CFOs, VPs of finance, and other cost owners in the cloud to sleep better at night. That's why we love them. But not everybody loves them because reservations are usually involved with committing to 1 or 3 years usage. And committing, I would say, can be tricky sometimes. It could be tricky. It could be like, I don't know, like a mental or psychological state, not necessarily a technical or a business one. I mean, let's say it's about as close as some of us will ever get to replacing our wild or unpredictable on-demand days during our youth, or something a bit more grown up and settled. So commitments, as far as I'm concerned, it isn't always just a sign of maturity in life. It's also smart, mature move in cloud computing. But anyway, RI and SP, they are around for many years now. We have chosen to bring them up today, mainly because AWS recently announced changes to its terms of service. Some people know is the TOS. And those changes can have a significant impact on how customers manage these powerful, cost-effective discount instruments. Now, that's why we are here today to break down what these changes mean for your AWS cost management strategy, and to share some innovative, perhaps less familiar ways to maximize the value of your RI and SP, including but not limited to real-time telemetry and other stuff. So if that sounds like your kind of session, please stick around with us. Right. But before we dive in, let me introduce myself real quickly. My name is Sharon. I'm a FinOps engineer here at GlobalDots, certified by the FinOps Foundation and by AWS, a cost optimization fan. And when I'm not crunching numbers, I'm a heavy PlayStation gamer and a Brit-Rock and Brit-Pop listener. You'll be able to meet me on Oasis reunion gigs this summer if you're lucky enough to get some tickets. That's a bit about myself. with me today, my manager. How fun is that? Dror, please tell the crowd about yourself.
Yeah, no pressure. So, hi, I'm Dror. I manage the engineering in GlobalDots. This means managing pre-sales, post-sales, DevOps, and our cost optimization efforts. As a company, we're around 140 employees strong. From them, around a half are in the engineering group.
And Dror, and just for the full context about the place we both work for and represent, GlobalDots is an established bootstrap with more than 20 years in the tech business. And we have a global presence with offices and branches across Israel, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Our expertise spans multiple verticals, primarily web performance and networking, cloud security, cloud management to all its different aspects, and essentially every internet-facing use case you can imagine. We have dedicated teams of DevOps and FinOps professionals who are driven by cloud innovation, and our focus is on identifying, testing, and evaluating products, platforms, and features, examining their maturity, functionality, pros, their cons, and market fit. And when it comes to FinOps, GlobalDots usually takes a very hands-on approach to cost optimization and cost governance, and reserved instances and saving plans playing a critical role in this mix. And in fact, in 2024, we are on track to save our AWS customers using our tools and our methodologies over $100 million. But enough about ourselves. Let's kick things officially off. So I know there's a slim chance that some of our audience might not be fully familiar with the basic concept of RI and SP. So Dror, would you like to unpack that real quickly?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So, at a high level, cloud reservations allow you to commit to a specific amount of resources, typically compute, but not limited to compute, over a set period of time. In return for that commitment, you enjoy significantly lower rates compared to pay-as-you-go. So on-demand pricing can go with potential savings of up to 60-65%, depending on the type of commitment and the nature of it. In general, the promise of the cloud since its inception was to be more cost effective, or at least more cost aligned to the business. So shifting from CapEx to OpEx. And planning the IT expenses was supposed to be easier, but in reality, the on-demand pricing in the cloud, like uncontrolled, can spiral very quickly out of control and have severe impact on companies that didn't actively monitor the costs. There are a lot of jokes and memes about it on the internet. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. The cloud providers are giving us tools, and in case of AWS, we have two major tools, which are reserved instances and savings plans, to help us plan our commitments. And by giving the cloud provider this visibility and forward planning, you get better discounts and better prices because they can manage their capacity better.
Excellent. And I would add on this point that workload predictability or planning actually is the key. In an ideal world, companies could just buy cloud reservations whenever and however they would like. If they could only forecast exactly how much compute power they will need over the next few years, or even only the next 12 months. In reality, not in the imaginary ideal world, most customers we work with and we see, they can't precisely forecast how many instances or virtual machines, how many of those they will need to run their infrastructure, serve their application, support their staging and dev environments, and so on. So not just how many instances, by the way, what size of the instances is also a concern, what family type. Will I need compute optimized instances, general purpose instances, memory optimized instances, with which operating system I'm going to run those instances. Sometimes Linux, might sound like a surprise to someone, but sometimes Linux won't be applicable as the first option. And then you have the financial specification. Should I buy RI with upfront payment or not? What is the implication of the amortization we need to do when we buy upfront commitment? How long until I will see clear ROI with any purchase of SP or RI? How do I justify the purchase when I'm communicating it over to the CFO or the financial decision makers in my organization? And those questions never end. So RI and SP orchestration is not an easy task to perform. And the key is that it's an ongoing effort, not a one-time effort, because even after you purchase the RI or SP, you still need to monitor the performance and validate you are not underspending or overspending with this instrument. There are some clear metrics that you need to monitor, like commitments coverage, commitments utilization, the saving rate. And of course, you should constantly understand what instances are spinned up and down by engineering, by R&D, product, cloud ops teams, and basically every cloud resource owner in your organization. So to put it simply, by reserving, customers putting themselves in a risk of financial loss. But it's even more riskier to your organization bank account not to commit at all, right? So this problem must be solved somehow, and you should find the right balance. And one more thing, the inherited risk of commitment is double down, and we can see this quite clear on this chart that we are showing right now. The inherited risk of commitment is double down from two sides of the equation, from two sides of the equation. If your usage is going up and you are not reacting fast enough, you'll miss potential savings by more expensive on-demand hours. But what happens if the usage is dropping and the reservation and then switching to underutilization mode? And that, believe it or not, happens to every company sooner or later. I mean, you may suffer from customers' churn. You'll probably implement cloud optimization at some point along your journey that will decrease your compute usage, or you will even face some external factors like economic downturns, natural disasters, tech industry disruptions, wars, something that, by the way, never happens in our homeland, Israel, COVID-19, investors running away, you just name it. There are reasons for you to eventually look at a smaller infrastructure. This is a given fact. So at this point, I think the problem statement of managing RI and SP is pretty clear, and I'm sure many in our audience can relate. Dror, could you walk us through some of the solutions that tackle the lack of predictability issue? And also, let's try step by step, try to understand how the recent announcement from AWS about the TOS update in terms of service will now heavily challenge some of those solutions.
Sure. So first, I think that it's important to understand and emphasize that not every organization needs an automated solution in place for this. Purchasing a saving plan is quite straightforward. You just need to log in to your AWS billing console. You have a lot of recommendations coming in from AWS, and with some API calls, you can select your chosen look-back period and compute usage, and with a couple of clicks, let's say you have $30 per hour of on-demand usage, you can easily save at least 20% of that charge and feel pretty safe. Then essentially you can forget about reservations until those savings plans expire a year later. And sure, this approach comes with trade-offs, but you might not get the discounts during on-demand surges, or you might risk a little bit wasted commitment dollars if your usage shrinks, but the simplicity is still there. And because savings plans is a flat commitment, you cannot shrink or trade or dispose in any way. But at a certain scale, this approach can make sense anyway, especially for low spenders, early stage startups, for them doing the minimum required and focusing their efforts on heavy engineering or development lifting might be the most practical strategy.
Most definitely, but in recent years, new types of solutions have emerged that effectively address this challenge of unpredictability in a pretty smart way. However, today we're talking about the solutions that AWS has now set its sights on this solution and maybe onto their revenue streams.
Yeah, so first of all, I think it started last year where AWS said, okay, hey, you cannot trade RIs in the marketplace if you have an EDP. If all of these are random words, then I think that we will elaborate on this a little bit further. But there was another change, and that change was this year. In our ecosystem, there are also MSPs who are basically in the middle between you and your AWS bill and providing some services, can be some DevOps stuff, can be migrations, etc. Support. But also these MSPs had a unique advantage where they could shift and move reservations between customers. So that means if they buy something, they can say, okay, hey, I can put it on customer A, and then I can move it on to customer B. Of course, there are some changes and restrictions around that too, regarding the minimum time that it takes and so on. But they built solutions on top of these that gave you the flexibility, right? So if you wanted to use their pool or bank of savings plans, then you can do that pretty automatically and get some discount back to you. Again, this discount was smaller compared to the full RI or savings plan benefits because those MSPs had to take the cut. First of all, they need to be profitable. And second, they also have their own risk, right, of overcommitting, and they had to account for that as well. So their profit was the difference between the deep discounts that a 3-year commitment gets you and the discount that they passed over to the customer. Right? The other limitation around that was they weren't always responsive enough to changes in customers' environments in real time. Again, because they had a risky decision to make. Those commitments can be moved around, but they cannot be moved around every 30 seconds. So when they have that risky decision to make, they need to be a little bit more conservative to avoid getting into a situation where they overcommit. So customers occasionally notice delays in adjusting these routings. Those solutions were pretty popular and are pretty popular. They notice delays in routing of their discounts anyways, and it led to some inefficiencies, especially in larger environments with the rise of on-demand cost. But in one critical way, those solutions were ideal. They gave customers the benefits of discounted usage without requiring any actual commitments. A simple 30-day notice was typically enough to route all of those RIs or SP hours back with no real strings attached. This flexibility meant that customer didn't have to worry about the workloads increasing or decreasing on how those changes are aligned with committed usage.
Wow, thanks for this great overview. But this party is pretty much over now, correct?
Pretty much, yes. Oh, the music stopped, and let's see what's happening.
Right. So without getting into all the too much legal boring stuff, the reason for us having this webinar today is because only a few weeks ago, AWS announced to its partners network that effective June 1st, RI and SP routing, as it's usually called, will be deprecated. The terms of service will also be changed to state more explicitly how today I mean, more explicitly than today, that routing is a foul play and that is not allowed. So what it means is actually effective June 1st, AWS will start enforcing it and actively block the operations that happening behind the scene that currently enables MSP to transfer the reservations between their end users.
So, Sharon, since this is a change for MSPs, how will it implicate the actual end customers?
So, great question. Actually, it remains to be seen how all of this will unfold. I mean, the announcement was made only a few weeks ago. However, one thing is completely clear. This policy change could effectively dismantle the routing model. I wouldn't say overnight, but real quickly, preventing end customers from receiving saving from the MSP centralized organizational pool or account or bank, like you described it earlier. That means that moving forward, customers will need to make commitments directly within their own accounts, directly from AWS, and they should do it to benefit from the savings again. Now, while some MSPs may receive a grace period to utilize the remaining committed hours that are in their pools, customers planning for the mid and the long term should be aware that these solutions are reaching to the end of their life cycle. It's very, very clear. And I actually think that this presents a great opportunity for customers. Now they can directly mitigate every risk associated with commitments and extract more value from them. Like you touched it a little before, but let me elaborate. The discounts previously offered by managed service provider MSPs for reservation through routing were relatively low to begin with. I mean, we were talking about effective discounts ranging between 15% to 30%. While there are compliant solutions out there in the market that offer up to 60%, and solution could be self-hosted, self-managed, or could be with any kind of automation. But the bottom line, they offer a much more savings that could stay in the customer bank account and could be directed to innovation and development and to the more important stuff than the financial discounts and financial manipulation. And that hasn't changed. Those solutions were always there. But what has changed is that now those MSP-based solutions becoming non-compliant with the TOS of AWS. So they're not just limited in terms of cost effectiveness. One point I'd like to highlight is this move by AWS comes only a year after, and you mentioned it very quickly, though, this change is coming only a year after another significant TOS enforcement that was introduced. The prohibition of free selling discounted standard arrays. And standard array is a saving instrument that offers the maximum discount for C2 usage. What was prohibited is the resale of those array on the array marketplace for customers with an EDP agreement. Enterprise discount program, for those who are not familiar. Customers with EDPs who previously benefited from the flexibility of selling unused arrays when their usage dropped were impacted significantly. The marketplace flexibility was leveraged by a lot of third-party solutions that automated the marketplace operations, the RI marketplace. As a result, many of their customers shifted to convertible reserved instances, which cannot be resold in any marketplace, by the way, but offer flexibility through the fact that AWS allow users the ability to exchange them during the life cycle. And there's no limit on the amount of exchanges any customers can practically do. So broadly speaking, what we can take away from the marketplace and the routing restrictions that recently introduced is that we assume that AWS strategy is becoming increasingly clear. What AWS is doing, they are making it harder for third-party solutions to capitalize on the RI and SP profits. And this appears to be an intentional business decision aimed at consolidating more revenue within the hyperscaler ecosystem, which is completely natural. They have their own results and their own KPIs, and this outlook is forecasted and clearly understood. So, having said all that, and we are looking forward to 2025, which is just around the corner, how would you suggest for customer to manage their AWS reservations? By the way, I'm now sharing another announcement from AWS regarding the same topic exactly. This is the official questions and answers that Amazon released to its partner network regarding the last motion. Anyway, Drew, please keep this going. And
first, if you think that those changes in terms of services affects you as an end customer, you cannot wait until June. The fact that this starts at June, that doesn't mean that you don't need to plan now. All of these reservations, movements, depend on both supply and demand. So every change in this is critical. Smart reservation planning needs to happen as soon as possible because it affects your EDP or your future EDP if you don't have one. So for sure, and again, that is the case where you are affected. The first step is seeking clarity from your MSP to make sure where you are with regards to this change. But even if you're not falling under this umbrella, but you're managing reservations on your own, I think that in 2025, this is far from being a best practice. Given the risks that Sharon mentioned earlier and the lack of automations, and also considering EDP as a part of the consideration if your account is large enough. So, in general, like the way we see it is, if you have an EDP, the short answer is just buy savings plans to cover most of your static workload on the first day of your EDP. If the rest of the unpredictable workload is significant, then my first suggestion would be to talk to us. I know that it sounds a little bit tacky, but we will take away not only your manual planning, but also picking the right tool based on hundreds of millions of dollars we're managing right now in very complex environments. Now, in our case, our mix of both tools and services makes sure that you get a fully compliant service from day one that works for you, and not only try to maximize the most profitable way to save on compute costs. So those tools around are there basically, and obviously that the goal is for you to save as much as possible through them. Well, we are trying to maximize savings for our customers because again, we have our own team to manage that and to make the right decision for our customers. This is not straightforward operation as you may think. AWS provides a wide range of discount options. If it's from compute savings plans, EC2 instance savings plans, standard RIs, convertible RIs, many more types of savings plans and RIs. Each of these are tailored to a different use case. Some are designed to help mitigate the risk of under or overcommitment. Others are more rigid and less flexible. Ultimately, for most organizations, I believe that the best approach is building a reservation portfolio that combines a mix of these options and try to maximize savings and minimize risk. And while you're researching and deciding for the right mix for your organization as the FinOps or DevOps or cost holder, CFO, you might find yourself incurring high on-demand costs, missing out on potential discounts, losing valuable time. And that is why it's crucial to act quickly and strategically here.
Thanks a lot. Great overview. At this point, I'd like maybe to highlight some modern commitment tools that have taken the real-time approach to the next level. Now, look at those fantastic outcomes. They are not someone's dream or any sales or marketing pitch. They are based on what we are seeing from our customers' savings performance. But How are these great results are even achievable in the first place? I would say that for one example, most of our audience today is probably familiar with the AWS Cost and Usage Report. This is arguably the ultimate feature AWS has for gaining granular visibility into the cloud spend. And it enables smarter cost optimizations and resource planning. Now, it's a basic capability for every FinOps team out there, but the cost and usage report has a significant downside. It needs 48 hours to digest the full billing data and output it to the customer. This means that if a major change happens to your EC2 environment, you won't be notified about the change, at least in pricing, until 2 days later. Then you'll need to adapt your reservations accordingly, right? And that takes another 24 hours to kick in. You purchased a saving plan on Sunday, it will only kick in on Monday. By the time everything adjusts, you've lost 3 days to under or over provisioned reservations. Now, the tools that today we recognize as the best market fit are addressing this limitation by still utilizing the cost and usage report for detailed insights and cost analysis for sure, but they are also leveraging real-time telemetry through AWS SNS and Event Bridge, for one example. Now, this allows those automation tools to detect changes much faster and reconfigure reservations in an intervals of just few hours instead of 3 days, at least, like I mentioned earlier. So it's a game changer in terms of winning more discounts, especially for fluctuating environments. And fluctuating environments is the best use case in the first place for any automation around our INSP. We also have tools in our portfolio designed to detect standard RI purchasing opportunities through the standard reserved instances marketplace, which, by the way, is still free for everyone to use for buying, while selling is more restrictive, as I mentioned earlier. But by purchasing short-term standardized, say for just 3 months duration, you can significantly boost your savings while facing a minimal over-provisioning risk. These purchases are made from other AWS customers who have listed their unused standard RIs for sale in the marketplace. And just to be clear, they are fully compliant with AWS terms of service. It's a smart way to gain deeper savings available on AWS, and this is a very useful method to increase the savings. And then, of course, we have convertible RIs, and unlike, like I mentioned earlier, unlike standard RIs, convertible, as the name suggests, are convertible. They are exchangeable. You can exchange one or more convertible reserved instances for another convertible reserved instance with a different configuration, including instance family, operating system, even tenancy, and even the commitment term and duration are replaceable. And again, there are no limits on how many times you can perform an exchange. So as long as the new convertible reserved instances is of an equal or higher dollar value than the convertible reserved instances that you are exchanging. So over time, you can build with those tools a portfolio of exchangeable commitments that will allow you to flex and scale easily without worrying about overspending or underspending with your commitments, and to build a portfolio that includes also saving plans on top of the convertible RIs in regions that do not applicable for convertible RIs usage because you don't have enough workloads there to be able to exchange, and some other considerations that you can and you need to take into account when orchestrating your coverage of reserved instances and saving plans. Now, I truly love commitments, and I can keep talking about commitments for hours, but Dror, I'm thinking we are starting to get out of time here. Anything you would like to say before we begin to wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I think that we usually think of AWS commitments in terms of EC2 only, especially regarding automation tools. But while EC2 is still, let's say, the highest chunk of a typical AWS build, the tool that you've discussed can automate a wide range of commitments. So for many services. So you can see the list of them in the slide here. With savings plans, for example, you can support Lambda or Fargate workloads as well. The actual automation process of RDS or OpenSearch works a little bit differently, but I think that we'll keep that for our next webinar, I suppose.
Indeed, and we are going to have this webinar. Thanks to everyone who took the time today to watch us. Please feel free to reach out to me or to Dror if you'd like to keep this conversation going. But just before you go, we got some questions from the audience we would like to address right now. So before saying goodbye officially, let's try to address some of these questions you raised during this webinar. So Amir is asking, what steps should we take to forecast our compute needs accurately and mitigating overspending risk when purchasing RI or SP? We just discussed this during a recent meeting last week with leadership. Wow, what a good timing. I understand why you registered to this webinar. Organization generally should use historical data analysis from AWS cost and usage reports combined with forecasting tools to predict their future needs. This is the short answer, but forget about tools for a second. What I think that we didn't touch during this webinar and is extremely important, and especially for those who doesn't employ any automation, the key is engaging cross-departmental communication in order to understand workload trends and aligning also with the development roadmap and sprints. This is very, very critical step because we always tell our customers that communication is the key for any FinOps methodology. If one hand doesn't know what the other one is doing, then you will overcommit with RI, you will overcommit with SP or undercommit, that's a fact. So if you need to evolve some Jira methodologies or just use Slack notification or any other method to enable a robust communication and project management, ongoing project management, this will be very, very beneficial for you and for your company. Around RI and SP, again, so the people who make the purchase and make the ongoing cost optimization should be aware of what are the engineering decision being taken place. Good luck, Amir. Now let me see if we had any more interesting questions. Okay, so next question. This one is by Jason. Jason is asking, I'm in the process of migrating workloads to AWS. What should be my outlook over saving plans? Great and very popular question by Jason. Thank you. Dror, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So first answer is if you're migrating, like first thing, don't commit to anything yet. You're migrating for a reason. You're not just doing a lift and shift to be cool and say that you're in the cloud. And saving plans, commitments, and reserved instances, and all of that is not the only way to save costs or to plan better. You're moving to the cloud for a reason. First, you need to understand what workloads you're migrating and how are they going to look on the other side. Don't forget that you're moving to AWS because they have a lot of tools. It can be spot instances, it can also be Fargate or serverless or something completely different that can be much more cost effective instead of just buying compute power and doing the same thing that you've done. With that, if there are things that you will say, hey, I know those workloads, they're already modern, it's my Kubernetes cluster that I'm moving, I know more or less how it works. So again, you need to look even in Kubernetes into Carpenter or other solutions, that doesn't really matter. But in the end, yeah, once you understand the baseline, then you should start committing to saving plans arise, or if or convertible arise if you need the extra flexibility. This is a very good time to also check the reality of your plan. Right? Everyone has a plan until they start moving and get a $50,000 bill as a surprise. So yeah, that's a very good point in time to have that discussion, but I wouldn't jump on those savings plans as the first thing automatically. I would first look at all of the other things.
Yeah, great point. And actually, using a convertible arise, even when if you just start to seed them in a very, very, very small chunks, is actually a great approach because the risk is minimal, but you are gaining into your environment. You're starting to seed and to build those low and not risky chunks that eventually will create for you the ability to exchange them and at a later date when you'll need a higher usage or you will decide for even another type of machines. So again, this is like a very, very big topic you need to discuss around migration, but the effort should, I would say, should be taken in parallel to understand what exact workloads are you going to migrate and what will be on a steady state during the first year, at least, of their existence in your migrated environment. And okay, last question, as we are really over time here, this time by Andrew, who wants to know if the commitment automation tools that we just described support GovCloud US region. Okay. And what level of access we need there to operate. Okay. Jason, the short answer is drum rolls. Yes, absolutely. AWS GovCloud regions are fully supported. The full answers, granting access to automated commitment management over GovCloud US, it requires a least privileged IAM role on each AWS account in the organization for which there is a compute usage in any GovCloud US region. The IAM policy limits the service to the minimum permissions required to real-time monitor of compute usage metadata and to manage RI and SP, and nothing more. So it does follow the best practice. Within AWS, the same usage telemetry data that is accessed in real time ultimately makes its way back to the commercial region, right? The famous North Virginia US East one, where AWS runs all the billing and commercial services. So in one line, I would say that when programmatically accessing AWS services in GovCloud, the solutions we trust ensure fully compliance with all the US laws and all your security requirements.
All right, cool.
Okay,
Cool.
that is all for today, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks everyone for joining, and hope to see you all soon.
Bye-bye, and happy purchasing of RINSP.
Bye.